Fear has to sit in the back seat. Courage is in the front seat, and you're driving the car. Now we've turned into this imposter, so to speak. And we're living with this duality of, am I this girl who's living her dreams, or am I this person who's choosing to put that aside like it doesn't matter? This is good programming, and I'm not ashamed to say that. There's a lot of toxic things that you can watch 24 hours a day. When you log off from us, you're going to be stronger than when you logged on. Fear and courage are two very important things that I talk about in my coaching practice, and I talk about a lot with my clients, because fear is such a natural emotion, right? Whenever we care about something, fear will surface. Whenever we have a defense mechanism, and we feel like we might be in jeopardy. Maybe you're in physical danger. Maybe you're in emotional danger. Maybe you're just afraid of doing something new, or afraid of doing something that you've always dreamed of, or that you want really bad. Fear will oftentimes pop up. And managing that fear is extremely important. So we need another emotion to go along with the fear. And that other emotion is courage, and they can coexist. The courage is important because the difference in fear and courage is that one will obviously be the primary emotion. And courage is the emotion that keeps you walking forward. It doesn't mean that you're not afraid. What it does mean, as I explain to my clients, is that fear has to sit in the back seat. Courage is in the front seat, and you're driving the car. Courage is going to keep you moving forward very cautiously, only because you have fear in the back seat that's very concerned about what's coming next. But we can coexist with fear and courage. We just have to maintain levels of appropriate levels of each one. And so, full transparency, even doing a podcast, I talk about fear and courage with so many people. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast is because I've always thought that I would return to media in some way, shape, or form. I have a broadcasting background. I did that for many years. I did breaking news, crimes, stories on puppies and corporate takeovers and community pieces. I did whatever was called for. I interviewed U.S. presidents. And when I left the news, I left because I was a new mom. I had a daughter that had a handicap, and I needed to prioritize her. It was more important for me to be a great mom than it was to be a great reporter. I wasn't going to sacrifice family. But when I left, I always knew I would come back to this in some way, shape, or form. And here I am. But don't think that fear wasn't present and forward in my mind, because the fear is. The thing is that courage keeps me walking forward. But courage needs to be nurtured. It's easy to nurture the fear in a way that keeps fear growing. That's easy. That can be a passive activity. It could be watching certain shows that give you anxiety. It could be a number of behavioral things that feed your fear. But feeding your courage is something different. And that's exactly what I want this podcast to be. I want this podcast to feed your courage, because if you don't feed your courage, there's something called the imposter syndrome that pops up for you. You may have this goal of what you can be in this life, what you can do professionally or personally. And when we keep having this reoccurring dream, this goal, and we don't do anything about it, or we don't do enough about it, now we've turned into this imposter, so to speak. And we're living with this duality of, am I this girl who's living her dreams, or am I this person who's choosing to put that aside like it doesn't matter? And that imposter syndrome is very real. And oftentimes, when we don't address our imposter syndrome, it manifests in other parts of our lives. We have anxiety, we're frustrated, we're short-tempered with other people, and sometimes we turn into dream snatchers. Because if you're living as an imposter and you're working next to somebody who is striving for their dreams and little by little is making progress in that dream, you have to be very careful, because you will be a dream snatcher and start quietly having these microaggressions against people who are going for their dreams because you're not. And that's what happens when your fear starts to override your courage, right? I want you to keep that visual. Your fear is in the back seat, your courage rides in the front. We're listening to the fear because sometimes fear is legit. Fear is telling you something like, there's a sign up there saying the road is out and detour. And we don't want to have the false courage that says, oh, we can go across that road anyways. We can make it. We're not daredevils, right? That would be irresponsible. So the fear sometimes is giving us legitimate information that we need to follow. But we do need to proceed with caution with our courage. And so this is my leap in my courage to do the things that I encourage my clients to do. I want to make sure that I'm not an imposter by telling people to do the things that I myself am not doing. And we have to be cautious of that all the time, especially when we are parents, we are siblings and coworkers. If we are in a leadership capacity, make sure you do a self-check-in and make sure that you're doing the things that you're encouraging other people to do. And in that way, you get to lead, large or small, with authenticity. That's what we're looking for. When we can show up for ourselves authentically, we increase the odds that we can show up for somebody else. That's what we're looking for. That's how we move the needle in our lives. And that's how we can authentically cheer for other people as we're still cheering for ourselves. So this is such an important piece for this year, to start keeping the fear and the courage in its appropriate proportions, right? So that now we're living authentically. So as we continue with this podcast, we're going to talk about this conversation a lot about imposter syndrome, because it pops up. It never, spoiler alert, it never completely goes away, but it does become a part of our check-in, right? That's why we mentally check in with ourselves to make sure that, okay, this is the real me, the authentic me that's speaking. And maybe my fear is the imposter. And I got to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So taking a self-check-in moment with yourself on a daily basis. And yes, I said a daily basis. And depending on the day, you might need to do it a couple times, right? Until you kind of start building some momentum and you know exactly what you're doing and what you're after, and you're very centered and focused. Don't feel bad if it takes you time, right? This comes with practice, right? So if you look at a coach like myself who owns her own business, it's a coaching practice. If you look at an attorney who practices law, it's a legal practice. A physician, it is a medical practice, right? Because we're refining and constantly getting better. You are no exception to the rule, right? You're getting better. One of our philosophies here at Brock Coaching and Consulting is we talk about the 1% method. The 1% method is highly publicized as a Japanese phrase called Kaizen. And Kaizen is small but consistent steps. If you do this with small, consistent steps, I don't care what your goal is. Again, if your goal is getting that promotion or changing careers or starting a business, I've even had coaching clients who said, Nikki, I don't want to be CEO. I want a spouse. I want a family. I want a personal life that is solid, right? That is a realistic goal. And you take the same approach to having a successful career as you would to having a family. It is the same process of goal setting. So again, the imposter syndrome is one that we've always got to be talking about to make sure that we're living authentically and that we're managing our fear and that we have a healthy level of courage. And this podcast, I want to be that tool that you can use to help kind of balance the two out, right? Maybe I'm not listening to the signs that the fear is saying. Maybe I need a bit more courage. I want this to be the place where you can kind of level off and kind of bounce those things off of each other. We will have these conversations. It won't be just me talking all the time. We're going to have guests that are going to show up and talk from different vantage points, but we're still going to be talking about goal setting, reaching your goals, how to manage change, how to progress, how to stay out of that imposter syndrome mode, and how to just build to better, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It happens with small, consistent steps. That's what we're here for. We are definitely here for your questions. If this hits a chord, we want to hear your feedback. Drop some information or questions you can read the descriptions, but drop some information below. If you need that touch point, let us know. If there's a specific topic that you want us to talk about, let us know. We're here to serve. That's truly what this coaching is about. We're here to serve. We want to put positivity in the world. We want to address very specific things and some broad things. This is a good time. This is good. This is good programming. And I'm not ashamed to say that. There's a lot of toxic things that you can watch 24 hours a day. This is the place where I want you to come, where you know you're going to get fed. That when you log off from us, you're going to be stronger than when you logged on. We want to be that spark of motivation and inspiration that you need to keep moving forward. And we're going to give you tools on how to do that. Our first tool that we want to give you, in addition to the podcast itself, is the 1% journal. The 1% journal is about how to help coach yourself. It is a prompted journal where you are given a series of exercise within the journal, and then you can write some thoughts, some goals. You get positive affirmations. You get an opportunity to start setting your mindset with 3 positive words every day to accompany you on this journal. So when you turn off this podcast, this book can be there to support you to the next level. So we're going to have so many tools and resources and individuals that will talk about their success and how did they climb this mountain. And I will tell you, as far as I know, none of them have a super cape. Nobody flew to the top of the mountain. They all climbed it. And we can help accelerate that for you one step at a time. So thank you so much for chiming in. We're so glad you're here. Keep coming back. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe. We're going to have some fun things. And that's the other thing. This doesn't have to be this sad, morbid, downtrodden kind of conversation. I like to have fun. I like to be real. I like to talk to people. I love to laugh. I'm kind of funny, depend on the day. You ask my kids and my husband, they may say otherwise, but this is what I love. I want you to have fun, and I want programming that lifts you up. I want to get started, launching the beginning of your day. You can start with us. We want to give you that kind of content. I love it. I'm here. I'm being authentic. I'm walking in courage as I want you to walk in courage. Thank you for joining us.